Well, good morning, everybody. I say good morning. It's Thursday, the 22nd of May. It's a beautiful sunny day. I'm just north of the flooded areas of central north coast of New South Wales. Our commiserations and prayers go out to all those people. And we've had rain for 3 months pretty much, and everything's green and lush and very spongy underfoot. But welcome to Club Grubbery, everybody. And today's episode is all about the Aligned Council of Australia and the World Health Organization. And we have an expert panel on this morning to guide us through the machinations of the decisions being made by the Communist Australian government on your behalf. First of all, I'd like to introduce the chairman of the ACA, Mr. John Larter, Esquire, who is also co-founder of Club Grubbery and Australia's chief grub hunter. John Larter, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Hoody.
Hoodie, we must be on good speaking terms. And co-founder and legal power behind the Aligned Council of Australia, Katie Ashby-Koppens. Great to see your smiling face, Katie.
Morning, Graham. Morning, John.
Well, we've just been discussing prior to going to air the ramifications of several videos that we'll be posting in conjunction with this interview. We want to unpack what's going on over in Geneva, but first of all, I want to talk about a couple of key players. First of all, of course, we have our own Penny Wong, and she ingratiated Australia before the World Health Organization in one of the most sickening speeches I've ever heard. I know that Penny Wong is a very, very capable person because she's managed to wangle her way into a position of great power and authority, and no dummy can do that, but she's managed to do it. Her motives are very suspect in my eyes because we know that she has close affiliations with the Chinese Communist Party. We're sure of that. And we know from talking to Trevor Loudon, the author of the book, Comrade Prime Minister, that Penny Wong and Mark Butler and Anthony Albanese, just to name a few, are very closely linked with outcomes that would only benefit the Communist Party in China. And we saw in Melbourne, John and Katie, how, and various other locations where she held events pre-election for Chinese community members only. Anybody else, any other ethnicity was excluded. It was for Chinese people only. And Trevor Loudon alluded to that on our show last night. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. Then we want to talk about Jane Holton. Now, she is a viper that has been slithering her way through the halls of government for many years. She's got her venom has infiltrated pretty much every social and public department in the country, and she has a major influence over that, and she's never had to front up for a vote. And then, of course, we have Dr. Tedros, the amazing Dr. Tedros. We need to ask the question, how does a Marxist communist from North Africa find himself into the top job in the World Health Organization? What are his qualifications, or better still, what is his agenda? So a lot to unpack, as well as where this WHO stuff is going and where we stand with the IHR. So welcome to you both, and let's unpack all that from the beginning. Let's talk about Penny Wong, Katie. What did you think of that speech?
Well, I wasn't surprised because, of course, we had last year Mark Butler appearing, making similar overtures. But look, it's incredible, the blanket welcome that the entire pandemic treaty is getting to Australian shores. It's incredible. Now, I do appreciate that Australia had a assistant or someone working on the international negotiating body for that document. But look, the way that it's being welcomed, open arms, and possibly the most infuriating part of that speech was the comments around COVID did this. No, COVID didn't do any of this. The public health response did this, and these documents are paving the way for this public health response to go unchecked forever with perpetual pandemics that the WHO will get to declare. And Australia will just follow all the recommendations.
Unbelievable. Johnny Larter, do we want Dr. Tedros prescribing our medications for us?
Well, definitely not, Hoodie. I mean, the clear and present danger is the WHO. Senator Ron Johnson said that on our show. We've got the New Zealand government standing up to these thugs. They're saying that they want to be independent. We've got the US government saying they're exiting the WHO and going about doing that. We've got the Reform Party in the UK, Nigel Farage, who have the overwhelming support of the British people at the moment. They're championing either a massive reform to the WHO or an exit from it. So no, we don't, and you can understand now, Hoodie, why I think there's been reticence to engage in any sort of review of the COVID era, because as we can clearly see in Wong's speech, they want to use the COVID situation to bolster their efforts in getting this grubby act through so they can maintain control of us.
It's a frightening prospect. Katie, yeah, the election result in Australia was a stunning defeat. I'm not going to say a stunning win for Labor because 34% of the population voted for them and 66% didn't. But it's a stunning defeat of conservative politics in this country, which many political pundits are saying has exposed us to another 10 years of hard Labor. This isn't going to get any better under this government, is it?
No, in fact, it's going to get worse, and I would say unchecked.
So,
Sorry, I've got nothing more to add to that one. It's going to be quite incredible. So we'll have a situation where federally they'll bring this in, and then all of the states will implement it in their particular different ways. And that will be possibly like we see in Western Australia with the legislation over there, which allows a medical authority or authorised person and a police officer, if the medical authorised person decides to forcibly vaccinate you. So we could start seeing those kinds of things happening at state level. We already saw the rollout of the COVID health response at the different state levels and how incredibly different they were. But look, that all happened without these documents. So goodness knows what whether they needed any more justification. Perhaps they would need more justification now because people were a little bit more cluey.
okay, so there were agreements reached by I think 128 nations in Geneva the other day. What do those agreements mean, and where do we stand in relation to the international health regulation? How much time have we got to do anything about that?
Yeah, sure. So that was 123 countries voted and 11 abstained.
Okay.
Now, really interesting. There are 194 member states, minus the US, that left 193 member states. Had all member states turned up, they would not have got this treaty across the line. It needed a two-thirds majority, which would have been 129 votes. They only got 123 or 124. But remember, they're saying all of this, it's being done for equity and solidarity. Where did all the other countries go? Why was there, 40 or so, or 50 or so missing countries? Well, it turns out a whole lot of countries weren't allowed to vote, get this, in the name of equity because they hadn't paid their fees. So look, there's some really questionable things. I'm trying to get to the bottom of the numbers. I'm trying to get to the bottom of the 11 countries that abstained. I don't have that complete list. I'm still missing 3 countries. But they would be doing, oh, it's a consensus vote. It was unanimous, and that's the way that they get the message through. But when you look at it, not all of the countries voted.
Well,
Unbelievable.
that tells you the modus operandi of these grubs, Hoodie. I mean, here we have it. The WHO, if you ask the average punter on the street what this mob's about, they would say about providing health care to countries that can't afford it, that have a lower standard of living than Australia. And essentially, Australia is there at the table, and we're overpaying. I'm sure we're overpaying, So we should be dealing these countries in that can't afford it. But here we have a situation where they're dealt out because they haven't paid their bills, and the Tedrosses of the world are using that now to make these egregious decisions that will basically end up locking us up.
Mm. And interestingly, those countries that weren't allowed to vote, or perhaps weren't allowed to vote because they hadn't paid their fees, are the ones that might have voted no to the agreement because they would like more free medications. And they've got some very delicious or juicy pathogens of pandemic potential that they might be required to share with the WHO under the pandemic agreement. So, you know, they could have been the ones to hold up the vote. And so or take away the unanimous statement. So, you know, who's to say that that wasn't a good reason to just sideline them? They can't afford the fees, so let's just cut them out. But they've got a whole lot of things we want, and they might have said no to our agreement.
And what about Dr. Tedros? John, what do you know about Tedros?
Well, not a great deal, Hoodie, to be completely honest. I just know anyone that heads up these organisations are certainly people that you wouldn't have round to your dinner table. Uh, you know, that's the bottom line. You know if they're in there and they're manoeuvring in those circles, they're not for the public. They're not for the people. So yeah, he's obviously someone that can't be trusted. You know, it's like Albanese when you've got Bill Gates lobbying into your to your taxpayer funded home, looking over the harbour. You've got to say to yourself, well, why is this bloke here? Why are they associating with these people? And we know the answers. They're just complete grubs.
Absolutely. What do you know about him, Katie?
Oh, look, probably as much as you and what you mentioned in the intro. He's certainly got webs everywhere. He has uh, contacts or has been part of some form of African terrorist nation.
Yeah.
That's really the extent of my knowledge, because a lot of the time these guys are just the puppets and the ones that are put up there and stupid enough to put their face at the front of the organization, whereas they're just having, you know, just the webs are twisted behind them and holding them in place.
Well, as Trevor Loudon said, he did head up a terrorist revolutionary organisation in Ethiopia. He was he is a Marxist. There's no doubt about that. But he's a very unremarkable person in the global sense. If it weren't for his chair position in the WHO, um,
Yes.
so let's unpack how someone like Tedros might get there. Who is the largest non-country member of the WHO that provides most of the funds?
So it's not a membership per se, it's what they do is they provide additional contributions. So the way that the World Health Organization was set up originally was member states would join. This was after World War II, and it was decided that there was the need to bring countries together. So the United Nations formed, and then the WHO, the World Health Organization, is a branch of the United Nations responsible for health. And more nations joined up over that time to get to the point of 194 member nations. The member nations were the ones that were always contributing money in the form of assessed contributions. And that was the ones that the African nations hadn't paid, which was why they couldn't vote. So assessed contributions are the number of dollars that each country is assessed to provide the WHO each year. The assessed contributions is why America's just got out, because it said we're paying much more assessed contributions than China. And so they were going along quite nicely. The problem was is that the assessed contributions just didn't seem to be quite enough. So they started up this concept of voluntary contributions so that countries could give additional money voluntarily. Now, in addition to the 12 million that we American that we pay over the next 2 years, Penny Wong also just gave $100 million to the WHO voluntarily of our taxpayers' money. Now, how that's come about and what's that all made up of, we don't exactly know. But what this does is it paves these voluntary contributions pave the way for private public partnerships where private entities and organizations can donate money through this voluntary contribution portal. And so as a consequence of that, we've started to get pharmaceutical industries supporting the voluntary contributions through these public-private partnerships. We've got Germany, who's one of the biggest funders of the WHO through voluntary partnerships, and they've got a huge pharmaceutical business model that sits behind them. But interestingly, there's also organizations such as the philanthropic such as the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. So we've got a situation now that the WHO is actually 25% funded by organizations that are not member states and have a very significant interest in decisions made by the WHO, which may line their profit pockets in the future.
Which single country contributes more than any other to the WHO?
I think it's Germany at the moment. US was up there, but they've stopped contributing. So it's Germany.
Okay. The CCP were heavily involved as well, China.
Yeah, but they don't pay.
How does that work?
This is why the US is so annoyed. China pays a minuscule amount compared to the US. So Trump's got the pip about that and said, no, well, the US is getting out. China doesn't contribute nearly as much as we do. So, you guys can have it.
Gee, the plot thickens. Let's look at a couple of other key players. For example, Jane Halton. Jane Halton has her tentacles throughout every single organisation. She was the architect of No Jab, No Play, just to name a few. She seems to be the go-to bureaucrat, John, in Canberra, for all of these grubs. She is connected. She's connected by blood to a great many influential people in government in this country, and she seems to have the ear of everybody in power. How does she do it, and what's her main game?
Well, I think at the end of the day, Hoodie, these people are essentially very greedy, and they love the control and power. That's essentially where I think it sits. Yes, she's probably one of many that work behind the scenes, and let's look at that organisation we uncovered during COVID, the Burnett Institute. I mean, here's another one, Professor Crabb, was it Brendan Crabb or whatever his name was?
Yeah.
I mean, he was on ABC News every second day, telling people to get vaccinated, using his background as an immunologist or whatever he was. Now, when you dive into the financials of that Burnett Institute, it was getting millions and millions of dollars of funding from the federal government through the Department of Foreign Affairs and all sorts of places, DFAT. I mean, and then they were setting up these interior silos to essentially look after all the back of house stuff in relation to testing for COVID and the like. So you can't trust any of them. There needs to be an inquiry into these people. I mean, ASIO should be all over this. This treason. What is going on? I don't know what else you call it. I mean, these people are not acting in the interests of Australia or Australia's sovereignty or its people. They are treasonous. I don't care what anyone says, and it applies to so many of them. I mean, even Penny Wong. I mean, what she said in that place is treasonous. No, call a spade a spade.
Yeah.
Mm.
Katie, Jane Halton came out recently and said that the vaccine saved at least 8 million lives.
Mm. Yes, supposedly. But you can make that number up if it's the number that you've modelled it to say what it saved.
Unbelievable. And so what do you know about Jane Halton?
Look, what I do know is possibly a bit more along the lines of gossip as opposed to concrete information. But whenever something sinister or along these lines comes up, it's like whack-a-mole, and there she is. And she's, I'd understood that she'd had involvement in the pandemic practice run that was conducted in 2019, just before COVID. I would like to note that there's been a recent another practice run for a pandemic, and that was for a pathogen that's released from a woolly mammoth or something that is exhumed in some sort of process for discovering it. So that one was just held, I think, in April. So watch this space. And then when it came down to the Pfizer contracts, she was all over the ones in New Zealand, to the extent that no other vaccine was supplied in New Zealand except for Pfizer. So that's the extent of my knowledge of her, but nobody's had anything to say nice.
She's a shadowy figure. She plays. I mean, she eats at the same table as Albanese now, and she ate at the same table as Scott Morrison. She floats in and out of these political parties, whoever's in power. Probably the highest paid bureaucrat in Australia, John.
But see, this is what's amazing, Hoodie. None of these people are held accountable in regards to their financial background, and this is what stinks. I mean, the former premier in New South Wales, Barry O'Farrell, lost his job over a bottle of wine that was probably undrinkable. And these people have got, who knows? Have they got 1 million Pfizer shares? We want to know. I mean, because see, these things, at a local government level, are very, very critical. They enforce it, and they say, right, you've got to do your pecuniary interests. You've got to tell us whether you own a motor car when you drive on public roads and all this sort of nonsense. But when it comes to this stuff, I mean, how do we know that these people are not being paid by these organisations, and therefore there's a massive bias? And of course there is, we know, but they're not obliged to do it. Now they should be, so it stops.
Well, we know that our own TGA is 95% funded by Big Pharma. That is a warning sign, if ever there was one. We are the most heavily funded by Big Pharma TGA in the world. The Australian one is, but I guess something's happened in Geneva in the last week, Katie Ashby-Koppens. And to me, it just seems like it was a big backslapping exercise to say how great were we and how great are the World Health Organization. The results of that vote of confidence means exactly what, and where do we go from here after that?
Yeah, sure. Look, you've got to remember who's there. They are people that get paid and have careers in public health. They need those careers to continue. David Bell, Dr. David Bell, Australian and former WHO scientist, actually says we need less public health physicians than more because of this exact reason. They're looking for work. And so we can see this with complaints about the money, US aid and support falling away from the WHO. And lo and behold, that money's being pulled away from malaria projects and all sorts of other projects that are on the ground projects. But reduction in bureaucrats, no. So that's the kind of situation that we've got here. So all of those people that were up there backslapping are all people that are paid by our governments. They are in the area of public health. They want to see this fly. They think public health is a massive risk, and they've got their blinkers on. They're the ones that have all of these crack up sayings like, no one's safe till we're all safe. And they feel that they're the ones that need to look after that safety. So, this equity, solidarity, inclusion, all of that nonsense is just permeating this organization. That's the people that work there. That's the people that want to see these documents get up. And they have probably not really lived in the real world at any time, because they're in their lovely little ivory castles in Geneva or maybe in Canberra. And that's the reality of how these documents get up. And the thing is it's happened really quietly. There's been very little media. I believe Penny Wong and Butler released a media release yesterday to announce it. I haven't seen that being picked up in much of the mainstream media. And if it was, it would be sold as great, because guess what? A lot of people still think that COVID, was really, really, really bad. And so we've got the situation that this document's been accepted. What does it mean for us here in Australia? Well, fortunately, the document can't be signed for another year. I don't think it should have been voted on at all because it was incomplete. It was incomplete because it's missing the pathogen access benefit sharing schedule. Now, why would we need a pathogen access benefit sharing schedule? Well, apparently, we need to supply all of our nasty pathogens to the WHO lab. They then get to conduct whatever research on it that they wish. The February 2024 version of the pandemic treaty actually referred to gain of function research and what the WHO would do around regulating that. And then lo and behold, we might have, another lab leak, or, the next pathogen does arise and the WHO gets to declare the pandemic. They then get to declare or recommend the solution, which our countries are going to lap up. So we've got this self-fulfilling prophecy under this document, which I think is the most alarming part of the document. And then what it's setting up in place is all the commercial and logistical infrastructure in place so that they can get those vaccines, the 100-day vaccines, to you so much quicker. And that's why we've got Moderna that's been constructed in Australia and Melbourne that can or boasts the ability to develop 100 million vaccines a year. And those facilities have gone up around the world and everywhere. So the only saving grace is that we've got a year before it needs to be signed. We need to ensure that it's not signed. And we need to ensure that more people learn about it and more people hear about it. So it's all of our jobs to let people know, hey, did you hear that there's new pandemic treaty documents being done? And to actually ask people about it, see what they know. And you don't need to pepper them with lots of data. Just let them know what's planned under it. And we've got a lot of information, really simply explained on the Aligned Council of Australia website that exploits both the pandemic treaty and the regulations.
It reminds me of a Bond movie. You remember James Bond nemesis was always that organization called Spectre. And when you think of the World Health Organization, the way you've described it, you two today, it just reminds me of Spectre, out for global domination. And it is so sinister. It's beyond belief that other people, all the people of the world aren't twigging to this. There's only a minority of people that are actually even interested in it. I've just had a message to say, a news article to say that the Queensland government is set to destroy all of its COVID data.
Mm.
Yes, correct.
Now, why would they do that? They keep data on everything else. Why would they want to destroy their COVID data?
Well, that's because the Queensland University have been doing a project which they're wanting to halt.
Yes, we've got a similar project that's halted in New Zealand on the basis of funding. But they're going one step further in Queensland, and they're actually looking to destroy the samples.
Exactly.
Now, destroying samples is pretty incredible. There's requirements to keep samples. If you go and get your blood tested, that blood's held on to for a very, very, very long time. Goodness gracious, I'd hate to imagine the storage facilities and what's involved. Yet these Queensland is making very clear noises about actually destroying it. So my boss, PJ O'Brien, and Julian have been writing to the Queensland government, university, to let them know that they can't actually destroy it, and that information will be needed one day and potentially soon.
It's incredible, isn't it?
It is incredible. It really is. But look, we know the data doesn't say what they want to. We know the real life experience. I've just had another two people close to me pronounced with stage 4 cancers of various places. There's people falling left, right, and centre, and it's numbers far beyond what I've ever experienced before.
Well, Gigi Foster, in our interview yesterday with her and Ian Brighthope, John, declared that the next major meltdown will probably once again be a health meltdown in the world. May not be financial or whatever, but it will be a health meltdown. And we are so, as a nation, as the citizens of this great country, we are so unprepared for it.
We are. But we can do a lot for ourselves, and that is get healthy, make sure we're living a good life, be resilient from all of this crap, because we can be resilient. We don't need to be living it before it's actually even arrived, and we be resilient by not being reliant, you know. We have our communities. We've lost so much, we've lost touch with our communities, and it's so important to be a part of them because we're only going to be able to save each other at the end of the day.
And Audie, look, let's look at it. I mean, if people think this isn't possible, I mean, we've interviewed. You remember we did the interview with the Brazilians not long back, identifying that they were being charged with a $30,000 fine for not vaccinating their children. And you know, these are poor people, so it's going on. We've got the incident in Singapore where Bill Gates arrives on his aircraft. And then within days, they pass a law that says if you do not comply with vaccination, you could be jailed for up to 6 months. I think it's 12 months on a repeat offence. So, I mean, you know, that's clear indication of what's going on. If anyone out there is thinking, geez, these things sound a bit too made up, and look at WA's legislation. They've actually got it embedded into their state legislation as we speak, that they can essentially go into your home and force vaccination on you. So if you don't think that this is going to come to a town near you under this spectre organisation called the WHO that Hoodie is rightly referred to them as, you're mistaken. Look what happened with Brad Hazard. Brad Hazard, for all intents and purposes, most people thought he was a reasonable bloke. But he took power to a new extreme in New South Wales. He introduced a public health order that essentially locked everyone down, and he alone had the power to do that. The state parliament essentially given him the ability to make those laws in a pandemic, and this is how they operate.
I'd like to get Winston Peters on from New Zealand, Katie. I've got a
We can
contact.
only ask.
Sorry.
We can only ask. I know as Chief of Staff.
Well, if you could do that for us, it'd be greatly appreciated. All we want to do is talk about the reasons why New Zealand said no to the WHO. We don't want to go on any other topic line with him, but we'd love to have him on. Yeah, if you could arrange that, we'd be very appreciative, and we'd like to get you back on with him if that happens.
Oh, sure. I'll certainly try.
Yeah, okay. So, how is the Aligned Council going?
Yeah, good. We're up to 38, 39 member groups now, 1.8 million people. We've got a number of different campaigns that have started. I think we're all licking our wounds following the election and simply the election results, having lost a couple of really good independent souls that, you know, we're representing all of our collective interests. So it's a bit of a stop, a refresh. I think we all need a bit of a refresh. I'm feeling damn exhausted after 5 years and it just not relenting.
Yeah.
And let's get going and get cracking and become more unified and more aligned.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think the biggest problem with the Aligned Council at the moment, Woody, if I'm to be quite frank, is that we really don't have any finances, and that's the real issue. I mean, there's a great bunch of people there doing great things, and I think we're having a real impact. We're putting out some great stuff. I mean, the people behind the scenes do a wonderful job, but it's very difficult to penetrate those places. Without the finances to do it, and that's the real issue. You know, we'd love to put together TV programs, ads. We'd love to do a whole heap of things, but it's just very difficult without the funding. So that's the real issue. And I suppose if you know somebody like a Clive Palmer, a Gina Reinhardt was interested in doing something outside of the political scene, then that would be the place to put a small donation in because we could do so much with it. And if Clive Palmer is serious about wanting to leave a better place for his daughter and his family, then you know we can help achieve that, I think. But we we can only do what we can do. Social media is a wonderful format, as we know, Hoodie. We're able to penetrate into those areas and advise people, but I think it would be handy to be able to get into that mainstream media area and just let everyone know that's watching the 5 o'clock news aware of what's going on.
Forgive my sigh of where to now. I mean, it just every day unravels another disaster just waiting to happen, doesn't it? And we can't. You're right, Katie. We've got to focus on community. I mean, my desk is facing out a window looking at green pastures and rolling hills and kangaroos and the sun's shining beautifully. And I'm going to go out shortly and do a bit of farm work and we still live in an amazing country. It's incredible. And we've got to make sure that we get out of our computers and get out of our lounge rooms and get out into the sunshine and get healthy to stay strong for what's coming because we're in for it, and we've got to be prepared for these things. I'm not talking about doomsday prepping. I'm just talking about being well educated without going down every rabbit hole under the sun. I we're going to this, John. We've been invited to this free media summit on the Gold Coast. I'm looking forward to that. I'm thinking about what I might like to talk about, and the thing that really jumps out at me. I've been interacting with a certain social media influencer in the last 24 hours who's all about charging the ramparts and we're all going to be marched off to death camps and all that sort of stuff. And you know what? We as a freedom group of people who are striving to have truth and integrity reign supreme, we reign on the other side for their fear mongering and fear campaigning, and we're no better. We're no better. I mean, we're John, you and I tried desperately not to increase fear levels in people, just increase their awareness and remain disciplined to the tasks that we've set ourselves so that we might be able to encroach in people's living rooms who are about to wake up. In other words, we need to crack into the mainstream media whenever we can. And we've had a lot of opportunities to do that. But boy, we can be our own worst enemy. We can really be our own worst enemy, and we are just as guilty of doing the things that we blame the other side for doing. We've got to all come back to a central foundation of truth,
Mm.
and until we can do that, there will never be a unity of purpose. I know there are a lot of people who are lobbying to start up some new freedom political party that will rival the Greens and the Nationals and whatever. But it's got to draw on fresh people, not the people who've been involved in this the last 5 years. We saw in Melbourne, Katie, just a couple of days ago, a
Yeah,
massive turnout of people turning out for farmers and firefighters. Um, that these are the kinds of things that are going to rise out of the ashes of what we've done the last 5 years, that are going to gel more people who weren't the slightest bit interested in what we were doing over the last 5 years. Maybe it's
correct.
their turn, and maybe what we need to do is support them in the best ways that we can, because maybe the whole COVID thing has been so decimated by the mainstream media and propaganda that perhaps the COVID freedom era is dead. I don't know that it is, but there are other causes rising around taxation, around central bank digital currency, around digital ID, and it's looking more and more likely that the people who are waking up now are going to be the spear point. And what we need to do is add our experience to that in a rational way to bolster and support them. What are your views on that?
Oh, absolutely. Look, if I had $20,000, $30,000, what I would do is I would sit here, I would do a couple of different sessions on how the United Nations 17 sustainability goals are all linked to what's going on here. So this recent huge fine that's being put on properties for under the guise of fire, this is all fits within these UN sustainability goals. They want us off their land. They want people to be living in cities, 15-minute cities. They want us only using 5% of the environment so they can do everything else that they want. And the digital currency, the tracking, tracing, the gender equality, all of this fits within these UN sustainability goals, which is essentially Total globalist control. The World Health Organization, the pandemic treaties, they all slot into these 17 UN sustainability goals. And while they look like a pretty rainbow, they're actually a dark, nasty, sinister color scheme. And they're doing a lot of undercurrent that's peppered all through our councils, that's peppered all through our state governments, and certainly peppered well through our federal governments. And it's all being played out. So you don't necessarily have to say, well, that's not my issue. If you deal with it under the umbrella of the UN sustainability goals, it's all of our issues. It's all of the reasons why we're all going to be on a universal income. And it sounds cracked, but it's all by design. Our properties being converted to electronic titles, perhaps so they can be much more easily taken away. There's all sorts of different ideas, but there is certainly a desire that we will own nothing and be happy. So whatever the cause it is, jump on board. If it has a flavour that you know that is coming from that globalist perspective, then jump on board. It is all of our fight to have.
Well, it sure is. So we watch and wait, and it's been really great to chat about these things, even though they're a little bit distasteful. But awareness, if you've got cancer or you've got some other life-threatening disease, you can't fix it if you pretend it's not there. It'll end up killing you. So more power to you both. It's really good, John, talking to you in this format as you are the chair of the ACA, and we've known your passion for a long, long time. There's a lot of information out there that we need to pull together. So let's do that. Let's get the ACA really as funded as we can get it, and let's try and pull it all together for the good of the people of Australia and New Zealand. Before we go, Katie, what's the latest on what's happening in New Zealand? Where are they standing with all of this? Are they on the mend?
Look, New Zealand's doing a lot of great things at the moment, driven mostly by lobbying with New Zealand First and really informing them because they honestly don't have a clue about the impacts of a lot of these documents. So at the moment, we've got Royal Commission Phase 2, which is happening, which is on vaccines, vaccine safety mandates. We had to have a Phase 2 because the Phase 1 didn't cover any of those key issues. So I'm actually travelling to New Zealand next week to appear before the Royal Commission on one of big submissions that we've just done, which is very exciting. And then also we've got the situation where New Zealand First has said that these pandemic treaties, we will retain our sovereignty, but we'll go through a national interest assessment first. Now, that's a bit so what, because all treaties need to go through a national interest assessment. What the important things is the right person goes through the national interest assessment in the right departments. And in my submission to New Zealand First is it's not just for the Department of Finance, but the Human Rights Commission, the Attorney General, to look at the sovereignty issues, because there are certainly sovereignty issues under these documents, to go to the Privacy Commissioner, because we're about to lose a whole lot of our private information to the surveillance, the tracking, the tracing, and the testing that's going to be going on. And that information will need to be shared with WHO. So look, it's a lot of things still happening, but in New Zealand also we've got a massive push with the digital ID coming in with the under 16s. So very much the same playbook, different time zones slightly between Australia and New Zealand as to when things are happening, but the push is just as great over there in lots of respects. We can only keep pushing back, and it feels like a lot more people are awake on a per capita basis in New Zealand, and that's because perhaps the pains hurt them much quicker because it's a much smaller population.
Yeah, look, there is definitely a real bond across the ditch, Katie. We saw that when John and I toured over there with the New Zealand doctors, with Angus Dalgleish and Paul Marrick. And there's a real bonding together, and I made a speech at the end about the unity between the two nations over the last 100 or so years, and you could just feel the vibe in the room. The people are we are brothers in arms. We're brothers and sisters in arms. So we want to encourage New Zealand. We dearly love to talk to Winston Peters and discuss how we can all work together. Okay, we want to work on solutions, and I'd love him to be part of that. Any final comments from you, John?
No, look, just investigate. Just ask yourselves questions if you're worried. If you're not, reach out, go to the ACA website, have a look at the excellent work that's been done there to try and explain all this madness. There's plenty of good organisations around the ACA and under it that are also doing their own things as well, which explain it. So go to any of those. They're reputable. They can be trusted. So yeah, look. But at the end of the day, just be positive. I mean, we'll get through it.
Yeah.
It sounds doom and gloom, but at the end of the day, these people are. We'll keep them on a short leash, and hopefully, we'll come out the other side better for it.
Mm.
And kudos to commentators in the mainstream like Chris Smith, John. Chris doing a great job to keep the whole process alive. And you've had great inroads, especially on radio, mate. And the more you get to do that, the better. And we'll slowly get there. It's just a matter of waking people up. So Katie, also I want to talk. We planted a seed about the horror that's going on inside of Qantas senior management and the way they're
Mm.
treating staff. We touched on that a couple of programs ago. We're going to keep feeding this little animal until it's ready to parade before the public. But more and more is being revealed to us from Qantas insiders about just how corrupted the HR and industrial relations side of things are. Corrupted in the way of their lack of reason, lack of compassion, and their conniving, underhanded way that they're dealing with people who have been sick and
Mm.
who refuse to be vaccinated. It's a story of its own. We're going to generate mainstream media interest in that story. We're contacting various journalists who we know will be interested in the information that's being gleaned to us. And Qantas, we're putting you on notice. In about 2 or 3 weeks' time, there will be an expose on the information that's been brought to our attention, and all of that information and that program will be passed on to mainstream media sources. So be ready. It's time to get your act together, Qantas. Apparently, the board and the new CEO, well, she's not that new anymore, Vanessa Hudson, they want a great reset in Qantas, John, to improve its image. Well, they got a caning the other day because of the way they handled the $120 million payout to people who were wrongfully dismissed during COVID. They are a grubby organisation with a glorious past, and they're destroying that past, and we're not going to let them do it on our watch. So let's get behind that. That'll be coming soon. We might bring it to a close with a prayer. Lord Father in heaven, we thank you, Father God, that we have people of courage like John and Katie who are standing for the good, though the heavens may fall. Father, it's true that we need people who will not be bought or sold, people who stand as true to their moral conscience as the needle is to the pole, people who will be there for those in need, people who will help those who need to find truth, find truth. So, Father, that's all we want to do. And as Trevor Loudon said in our recent interview, we have to realise, Lord, that this is a battle between good and evil, and we have to choose this day who we will serve. And for my name, Graham Hood, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Lord, may we march forward together in unity, we pray in Jesus' holy name. Amen. Mr. Larter, Chairman of the ACA, I've often heard you say
You just couldn't make this stuff up.
you couldn't make this stuff up. Katie, always great to see your smiling face on our screen.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
You've lost interest in me because we were sort of running into each other all over the country and New Zealand. And now it's like this is the first time I've seen you in forever. You haven't gone off me, have you?
No, I haven't. You weren't at the AMPS event.
We weren't invited to the AMPS event.
Oh, well, we'll have to get that sorted. I might have to see you up at the independent media one then.
Oh, you'll see us there. Now, listen, I've got to ask the question of AMPS and the people who organised it. Why was the chairman of the ACA and someone who's been at loggerheads with APRA for the last 5 years, why was he not on the speakers list? It's a little axe I've got to grind. I won't mention his name, Johnny Larter, but that is
Oh,
what it is.
I'm sure there'll be
Um,
follow-ups, Hoodie. It's all about the cause at the end of the day. We just need to keep hammering away, keep hammering away. Um,
Definitely.
that's
we'll
the way. All right. Well, God bless you both. And thanks for joining us on Club Grubbery. Stay out of the trees. You live in a great country. Stand up for it. God bless you. And we'll see you next time on the show. Bye for now.